council meeting, July 22nd, 2019. Flag salute. Mr. Lavasser.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kraus.
here.
Ms. Damitz. Here. Ms. Glosser. Here. Mr. Lavasser.
Here.
Mr. Valchef.
Here.
Mr. Amendola.
Here.
Ms. Perry.
Here.
Mayor Bloom is not here. Solicitor Corbel.
Here.
Engineer Minsterman.
Here.
And Public Works Director Adam Ross.
Here.
All right, approval of the bill list. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Approval of the minutes dated July 8th, 2019. Motion?
I make a motion for the
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Citizens' comments.
Oh, you know what? Thank you.
That's for later. All right, so both of these are non-agenda items, so we'll move those to the end. Thank you. Acknowledgement, acknowledge the receipts of the written reports for June 2019, the financial report, Act 511 and trash collection reports, property tax collection report, police report, EMS report, ordinance officers report, building inspection report, public works report, fire department report, and library report. There is a note that the June 2019 treasurer's report will be provided by the treasurer with next month's reports due to time constraints. So moving on to president's report, not a lot to report except that we did have an executive session ahead of this meeting where both personnel and real estate issues were discussed. No action was taken. The other thing that I want to highlight is coming out of the last couple meetings, there's been a lot of talk about volunteerism and the state of volunteerism, which prompted us to take a look at an existing volunteer community service award program that had fallen by the wayside in the last few years, and RJ will talk a little bit more about that, and we'll be looking to reinstate that so that we can recognize the volunteers that we do have. Mayor isn't here, so we'll move on to the engineer's report.
Thank you, Madam President. I have nothing else to report or to update in our engineer's report.
The paving, is that beginning soon, or is that any date on that?
Yeah, I know that they haven't, I believe, Rob, did you have a pre-construction meeting? Is
Yeah,
the date set?
we had pre-construction and they plan to come in the last week of August. In August.
All right, any other questions for the engineer? Okay. Solicitor?
I have nothing of note to report other than to let everybody know that the ordinances regarding the parking and the backflow preventer program will be advertised this week for consideration on August 12th. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I'll take over and the manager can report.
The water
Yes,
line.
Phil?
All right, interrupting my important water duty. All right, so just a few items on the business agenda today. We have just the first two under Public Works. They're just sort of routine sewer contract items. So the first is a payout for the lining repairs contract under our regular consent order, annual O&M. There's also a change order on there just for altering the prices of some, materials, changing in the quantities. I just threw it on there because it's over 5,000, which is typically when we approve, this type of order by motion. But it's just, again, contractor materials changing prices, so nothing major. The only other thing that we have on the business agenda for voting is a resolution requesting a grant from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County, affectionately known as RAC, to offset costs associated with the inaugural downtown Crafton block party. So this is just another one of those standard form resolutions that grants put in there, so it authorizes you essentially to say, yeah, we do want to pursue this grant. The grant itself is due next Friday. However, of course, this is the last meeting that we're going to have until the due date. So we're looking at a cost of maybe applying for a couple $1,000s worth, essentially just to, again, defray the materials, some of the different vendor costs, maybe renting a couple tents or something like that. As a reminder, that's scheduled for the first weekend of October. Near the fire department parking lot to sort of coincide with Fire Prevention Week and to launch the I Heart Crafton downtown branding. So this grant, it's a kind of a smaller pot of money, though, because this would be applying for a very small portion of it. We have a better chance at least of getting it, and if not, we can certainly still do the block party. We'll just maybe scale back some of the different materials used. So that's the only thing in the planning and zoning section. Again, kind of a light voting agenda tonight. The other three items on the manager's report. The first one is just wanted to note that we had another meeting with the Port Authority regarding TOD, that's transit-oriented development, for those of us that have not been on the journey with the Planning Commission and the Port Authority with the different workshops that we've been having with them over the last year. So this was set up by the Crafton and Ingram Planning Commission chairs, just to chat with the Port Authority and see if maybe the TOD manager, Green, could come in and just speak to the Planning Commissions at their next joint meeting, which I believe is in September, just about sort of different transit-oriented development strategies, opportunities for Crafton and Ingram, just, becoming kind of conversational as their partnership with Connect moves forward in studying the areas in which the Port Authority has stations. So that's been, we've had some really positive meetings with them recently, with both Breen and Lydia Morin, who is the executive director of Connect as of January, I believe. So the Port Authority is looking to maybe, continue these collaborative efforts over the next couple of years, depending on funding, and it's just good to keep the conversation going because it positions us well for opportunities in the future. So we'll be continuing to discuss that, and Breen should be at, I believe, again, the September meeting for the Planning Commission. The item that our council president mentioned earlier was the Edward L. Stewart Community Service Award. So this is something that I believe was started as like a mayor's community service award several years ago, probably at least a decade ago. And council took over the program with a resolution at the end of 2011 to implement it, for the first time as a council program in 2012. Basically, it's just the volunteer organizations in the borough, nonprofits, sort of all the standard players that you see when you have one of these community events. They have the opportunity to select a person to nominate to Borough Council for the Edward L. Stewart Community Service Award. It's not something that requires a ton of administrative, work or investment behind the scenes or whatever. It's just a good way, basically, for the volunteer organizations to network, see each other, in the fall, and recognize somebody that really stepped up that year. So I think that kind of ties in nicely with the conversations that we've been having about increasing awareness of volunteer opportunities, making sure that, we recognize how much work our volunteers and not-for-profit members do put in. So the deadline, I believe, was sometime in mid-late July previously, when this award was still regularly, being given out to nominate. I would just suggest that we bump out the deadline and the timeline for it. That's just, something that essentially we can just do, administratively, since the enabling resolution already exists. I guess it's just, at the end of all the nominations and everything, you throw a little snack party, sort of, again, a networking opportunity and recognize everybody. And, so that's something that we're gonna be reaching out to the volunteer groups to let them know that we intend to do the recognition again this year. I'm hoping that this raises awareness of how much they do and how much help they really could use. So did you have anything you wanted to add on to this?
I just wanted to clarify, in the years that I remember it being done, each organization is invited to nominate someone from their organization, and generally each of those nominees would be given an award.
Yes.
So it's not just a single award,
Yes.
like only one. Every organization gets to nominate somebody, and that nominee is recognized.
Yeah. Last item on there, pretty brief, just wanted to let you all know that we are intending to purchase some smaller pieces of equipment for Noble Park. This is something that I've met with members of the rec board a couple times this year, and members of the organized house tour. The funds that go into the borough budget for that typically were dedicated to some sort of rec park activity, pool in the past. And so the suggestion this year is they would like to add some small pieces of equipment to what they call the pocket parks, Noble and Linwood. We took a look at Linwood. They seem pretty much full up for the space that they have for little bouncy horses and fun things like that. So right now we're looking at 2 pieces of equipment, sort of a little sit and spin thing, and another bouncy whatever animal it is that we end up ordering. And that's only a few $1,000s, so an easy upgrade to take to Noble Park. For not too much cost. And again, those funds are collected by the house tour. So the borough is planning to add, we're looking at sort of a larger merry-go-round type, I guess carousel, whatever you call those things that spin around nowadays, at the main park after we find out whether we received that grant from DCED that we applied for to get the rubberized safety surface installed in the main park playground. And then we'll kind of go from there, but that was another thing that had been discussed, and I think it's been a while since they got some new equipment there, so look for that soon. Anything to add on that, Rob?
No.
That's my report.
All right, thank you. So moving right along to the Public Works business agenda, I am seeking a motion to approve pay application number 1 for the 2019 O&M sewer repairs, contract B, lining repairs project to Insight Pipe Contracting Incorporated at an amount of $2,492.28 as recommended by the borough engineer.
So moved. Seconded.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Seeking a motion to approve change order number 1 for the 2019 O&M sewer repairs, contract B, lining repairs project for an increase of $5,226.40 to the total contract price as recommended by the borough engineer.
So moved. Seconded.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to planning and zoning, seeking a motion to approve resolution 2019-10, requesting a grant from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County, RAC, to offset costs associated with the inaugural downtown Crafton block party.
So moved. Second that.
Any discussion?
Who is in charge of the block party?
So it's a working group that's been formed between the planning commission and the rec board, so it's just different members that are collaborating with, the borough administration, i.e. me,
Okay.
to put together the logistics.
Okay, so what are the ideas ideas for its inaugural, for the
Yeah.
inaugural party?
So there are a couple different sort of just general interactive activities like sidewalk chalk, bubble wands. The library has gotten involved actually, and they're looking at maybe a little reading corner kind of thing.
So this is gonna be geared more towards families?
Yeah, I mean, it's geared towards anyone that, you know, wants to sort of come down and experience downtown as a place again. I think there are some other things that are being discussed, like what would it look like if we had a planter here and things were a little more green? You know, maybe giving the opportunity for local businesses to come down and set up, you know, come into the store today and here's $10 off, or, you know, I mean, it could be a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but we're sort of, the goal is just to put out there that downtown is a place that you can be instead of just drive through, you know?
What do you foresee with, just in a ballpark range, as the costs that we would be recouping out of this grant? What is our upfront cost?
So the match for the grant is 35%. So, you know, depending on how much the materials, they're putting together a cost estimate, we can sort of cut if necessary. The grant you can apply for up to $5,000 for an event like this. I don't foresee the cost coming anywhere near that. I would say maybe our match is between $500 to $700 on the high end, but you know, maybe if we can cut some stuff, which not saying we will. You know, there's a working group meeting tomorrow, but depending on what we, you know, sort of decide and filter out, we're probably looking at under $1,000 for us, and that would go into the mobility and design improvements line item.
Okay. And what is the kind of thought process, and I understand you guys are incubating ideas, but what's the thought process of how we're gonna market this?
Well, I think that we've been doing a lot of it already at the council meetings, just bringing up, hey, this is kind of what's going on, here's the progress update on this. I know that we've talked to several local business owners, so they're aware. I believe that the gentleman that runs the tattoo shop has been working on some art for the I Heart Crafton kind of downtown launch thing. Last I heard, because I wasn't able to attend the last working group meeting, but it looks like they're working on a banner to sort of put it up. And the idea is, you know, you're going to drive by it probably at least once a day, and maybe you'll stop and go, ooh, you know, even if you didn't hear about it, but we're going to hit the website, Savvy Citizen, somebody's going to post it on social media.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks. Great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So moving on to discussion items, I wanted to just put out the Stewart Award because that's kind of a new thing that we hadn't talked about in council. So I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions, discussions, suggestions before we move on to the item that's listed.
This was just no, I don't.
Okay. Anybody else?
It's sort of like the mayor's,
Well,
Award?
a while back, it was the mayor's award, and then evidently the mayor dropped it, and council picked it up and did a resolution to make it a council annual event. And then, so that we have a resolution from the end of 2011, and I think that council only did it once in 2012, and it kind of died a quiet death. And so we were reminded about the program, and RJ looked up the resolution, and we'd like to resurrect that as a council activity.
So we're gonna give an award to the best,
So basically, yeah, how it worked back when it was active, and I was also involved in a couple of community organizations, is each volunteer organization is invited to nominate someone from their organization, and essentially all of those nominees receive that award at a little award recognition, as RJ said, little snacks, and so family gets to come and everybody gets to be showcased.
Cool. Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
And
All right.
can a member of council
us as a body, can we recommend someone?
Sure, why
or
not? I mean,
someone?
there's no
Okay.
really, nothing really set in stone except that we have this program that we introduced by resolution and kind of let go by the wayside. So
Okay.
certainly I would invite council
Someone
to
from the community that we see doing. something.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be like, the council special award or something like that. So, and I think that what we're targeting, given the time frame, is to maybe do something when we're talking about October.
Yeah, well, so I think that maybe in September, October is when the party used to be held. Maybe we could have a little bit of a closer turnaround time between the nominee periods, since that usually ended right around now in the year. So, just kind of
We can
depending
just
on.
we can push everything out
Right.
a month or so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody cool with that? Okay. All right, and then we have another discussion item, multimodal transportation fund grants, DCED and PennDOT. I think you put that on, Mr. Lavasser, so
Yeah.
would you like to introduce the topic and set the framework for the discussion?
Yeah, so over the past year, we've received newsletters from various organizations, including DCED, Alcosan, and PennDOT, regarding multimodal transportation fund grants. And usually you get them like 3 weeks before the deadline. You're like, well, what's that? And well, it was that time of year again, and it popped up, and I was like, well, what's the difference between DCED and PennDOT? And I asked the engineer to look into it and sort of discuss what Gateway Engineers has done with other clients. And so that's one of the things that he's researching. I don't know if he's prepared to discuss this evening, but in June 2019's Municipal Connections letters from Three Rivers, proud the Alcosan newsletter, they recommended that communities such as Crafton that are within their network consider applying for their Alcosan Grow grants, which we are doing, but also look at working with DCED to leverage both funds to work on economic development, and particularly to sort of help along with the streetscapes, lighting, sidewalk enhancements, and the pedestrian safety per the newsletter. And so I know that's one of the strengths that the manager has in her previous places of employment and through her internships with Connect. So my question for the administration and for the engineers to sort of give us a framework. What is the difference between the PennDOT funds versus the funds through DCED, and how do we go about planning for 2019, 2020 to sort of integrate these moving forward, and how to enhance our odds to be accepted into one of these programs?
So I know that our manager has prepared some information to at least give us some frameworks about the difference in the grants. So would you like to start, RJ? And then if Rick, you have anything to add after that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Rick may have seen a little bit more on the DCED ends of the grants, because they have largely very similar mission statements, and that sometimes when press releases are written about them, they accidentally use the mission statement of the other grant and not noticing that it's the same thing. So it's kind of just two different pots of money that are controlled by different agencies that are for similar goals. A multimodal just meaning you can get around more than one way in the area that they're targeting. So the PennDOT grant is a little more open-ended in that it considers things like railways and airports and seaports, river ports, whatever you want to call them, walking, biking, as well as driving by car. Now realistically, that wouldn't be very different from the DCED grant for Crafton, because we have neither a major train transit or airports within our boundaries. But so the PennDOT grant, at least, they release a lot more statistics as to who they award the grant to. every year. I've seen it used particularly in Castle Shannon, where they did a streetscape design for, around the, I believe it's the Willow, T station, and which is sort of their little downtown district, but they get a lot of commuter traffic coming through, so they're sort of trying to capture that and turn that into local, Main Street economic development. So they received about $1.5 million for the construction of a more accessible area around the transit station in their Main Street district. So that's just an example. When it comes to pairing with the GROW grants, not that Aetna did this, but theoretically, an example might be the Borough of Aetna did a very aesthetically pleasing but also functional stormwater capture design in their downtown area, and so that might be a way that if we tee up any sewer projects here while we're thinking of the streetscape maybe in a handful of years, that would be a good partnership, I would think. Do you have anything like to add?
I think one of the issues with grants is that they are confusing. So, as you mentioned, both agencies have multimodal grants, and they both target similar but different areas, and they both have different deadlines for submittals and requirements of the submittals and grant amounts and contribution amounts, right? So one of the things that would probably clear a lot of things up is if we put a spreadsheet together listing the elements of each of the grants and from each of the funding pots, whether it's PennDOT or whether it's DCED, the types of grants that they have that would be applicable to Crafton and some of the work that you're thinking about in the future. So it would make it much more understandable, much more clear in seeing which direction to go, which grant to get, what is the timing. Some grants allow you to use another grant as a match, and some don't. Right, so there's so many nuances. So I think it'd be wise to put that spreadsheet together, at least starting with the 2 pots of funds, which are PennDOT and DCED, and then even grow that outside of those, because there are other agencies. What happens though is it gets overwhelming.
Well, so I want to throw out,
I wanted to ask, Rick, part of the scope of practice with our engineer firm is that I have watched over the last few years that your organization tends to shepherd that as you begin to see what our project priorities are. It seems as though your people kind of go out and look at all of the opportunities that we might have. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, we do monitor that. We do look at that. But I just think if more people are looking at it, more ideas come out of it, different ways to think. So, and plus you bring a different perspective, intimately the town and the projects. And sometimes just looking at grant applications can generate a thought on a project versus the other way, having a project and then looking for a grant. So we have spreadsheets like that, so I can offer that initial spreadsheet to list the grants that are available, and then pick which ones we'd want to expand on, and then anyone of council or any of the staff that's interested can follow up, can participate, can make suggestions for different grants or different projects.
So something that was kind of really, it's very parallel in a really nice way, that I've been advocating for when I go to sort of the regional organizations, Port Authority workshops, attending the Connect meetings. They just had a visioning session last week for sort of their annual priorities. What I've been asking for is very similar, sort of a polished grant compendium, whether it's by agency or topic, like transit-oriented development, economic development, sewer regionalization, road infrastructure, things like that. There are so many grants at the state, at the county level, just floating around with foundations. And if they could, provide us with basically a topic and then a grid of this is when the grant's due, this is how much you can get it for, these are some projects that this grant has been used for in the last 5-10 years, something like that, to give you an idea of what you realistically could pursue it for, that would go a long way. So fingers crossed, I'm kind of hopeful that they might toss some grad students at that within the next year or so, and we might actually get an actionable grant compendium from that. So there are a lot of other things people ask for, but I think that's a good one.
Well, and then just to ask you, RJ, so because we don't necessarily, this is something that this council, I think, whether it's us or whoever came before us or comes after us, it's chicken and egg. We don't have a list, ergo, we don't know what to do, should we apply, we don't have projects, will we get it, so I can see where, we need to, at least I feel it needs to be some diving into the pool, so to speak, just to get it started. So what do we have, this is just an open-ended question, that if you saw a grant like this being used for the streetscape, I'm using air quotes because that can mean a lot of different things, but something like that, do we have anything that's been kind of floated that we could go dust off? And
So there is actually a list that the engineers and administration, and I think their public works committee work has pulled together. And there are a number of different kinds of projects, ideas on there, and I think that that list looks as though it's something for something that we could, as a council, have some discussion on and look at dividing, prioritizing, and that sort of thing.
yeah,
In
I'm trying to find that email.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was sent to the whole group yet. I think it was just something that
We
was.
submit to the Public Works Engineering Work Group.
Right, right. And so I think that the natural progression for that would be to, to kind of bring it out, bring it, read it off, discuss it, and, look at, there are a number of different types of projects. And so, we can begin to look at that. And I think there's a number of them that, some groundwork has been done on. And it's all in that over, the course of the coming months and year plus, that we as a council and as a community need to match those against our comprehensive plan and current community interests.
Yeah, no.
Are you asking for shovel-ready projects?
Yeah,
Or-
kinda.
or- The answer is
So
not,
very impatient.
not right now, but there are ideas that could lead to them, because really a lot of these grants, like see, a design, or you apply for grant for design money, but that's in service of a larger, concrete strategic
Right.
plan where you can
It's like-
hold it up and say, this is where we're
Because the
going.
larger thing is the comprehensive plan.
Right.
So we can always lean on that and say.
If you do some groundwork, yes. I mean, particularly the PennDOT one, the MTF, Multimodal Transportation Fund is sort of one of the big boys of streetscapes. So, that would be something to kind of hang on to until we're really ready to go.
Right, yeah, for sure. I
But
mean,
there are others.
Right, and I guess my question is what low-hanging fruit, in a sense, that we could say like, I'm just gonna make up off the top of my head, like, a grant to get like some, flowers that we stick down the middle avenue on every,
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's like,
Because that's not like something that you would need to go and get like an entire document outlining the 2025 flowers we're planning on getting. It's like, is there money for that? Can we grab some of it? Because it would fall in line with making Crafton beautiful, which is in the comprehensive plan, so it all kind of, would tie in there.
well, the block grant, or excuse me, not the block grant, the block party grant that we did the resolution for tonight is a really good example of that. Is that, the money's there, it's a small pool. Sometimes people come in with, really heavy projects that are half of the pool of money, right? But then they look for the places where they can sort of plug in smaller things to fill in the blanks. So that's kind of what we're doing with the block party grant, but there are opportunities for things like throwing a couple benches, in downtown.
Because I'm looking at the document that Claude is referring to, and I can see this in, like, the first thing on here, and I'm just gonna read it, because it's not like that secret, we've talked about it a million times, it's install ADA ramps at all crosswalks and intersections that don't currently have them. I mean, like, that's the kind of things that,
That's, yeah, we had the CDBG
Right.
grant for that this year, so that's a good example.
There's one in
of
here
that.
that just says beautification projects,
Yeah.
so.
Some things are very vague ideas on that.
Well, okay, as long as we're targeting these and trying to get them as quickly as we can, because, obviously, it's something I think we desperately need, so.
We've got about I'd say close to $3 to $4 million worth of grants in this annual cycle between sewer and this, which is very major, so.
Good.
So we're making progress on that, Phil?
So my point in bringing this to the table is to get us to begin thinking about how to leverage these various funds and to think about, you know, what Alcosan's recommending, which is, hey, we have these grant funds, all right, and, you know, the big task is like, how can we integrate some of these stormwater separation, source reduction ideas with these other funds to achieve the two aims, which is source reduction plus focus on TOD, you know, trans-oriented development. And, you know, we may call it multimodal to you in the public or trans-oriented development, but they're one and the same. And how do we leverage these state funds to help us so we can try to work within our cash flows or within our financial means, and if it means planning over the next several cycles, that's fine, but we should try to plan, to instruct the engineer and administration to work on this concept. And from what I understand, the engineer said that some of these municipalities have even employed lobbyists or groups to help them influence the process, whether it means, you know, going down to the legislator and say, hey, Crafton's got this great idea, you know, we're working jointly with Carnegie, and we're trying to, you know, we're on the busway corridor, whatever it may be, you know, it's working with Port Authority or Connect. However we formulate this, that we can begin thinking about over the next 6 to 8 months before these grants are due, you know, and sort of just come up with something for, you know, something.
All good points, but I would reflect back to the remark that you just made, which is about how much money have we managed to leverage in grant applications?
Right, yeah, so, well, the Crafton Boulevard Grow grant alone is a multi-million-dollar application, which, for comparison, the ones that we've done previously are more than $100 to $200 or $300 range, or, excuse me, thousand, you know, 100,000. So, I mean, that's gonna be a big win if we get it.
So maybe we talk about how we continue the work that we've already laid the groundwork for, and to look at the timing to move some of these ideas and these potential projects forward in a good cycle to take advantage of these opportunities. And I think that we've heard that we have a commitment from our engineers to begin to give us a little more visibility into the availability, but I would also hope that they can give us a little more guidance about the cycle that some of these things take. You know, to your point, Brad, the idea of the flower pots, that's maybe a very small thing that doesn't even have to involve engineering.
I actually have printouts
Yeah,
on
no,
my
I'm
desk,
sure that-
because we just looked into that last week, it's great timing.
I guess my follow-up for what Phil was saying is that he's in theory asking, you know, what are we gonna put up to help facilitate, you know, why they would wanna dump grant money here. And so if we can pay out of our pocket, if we have the finances to do so, the signage and the smaller nit details that, you know, will help show, yeah, we are revitalizing our business district because we did do X, Y, and Z on Noble Street. So then can you give us a really good grant so we can do the fun stuff?
Yeah, that's what, watch the mobility and design improvements line item, because that was sort of the
And then we
ground
are
we
at that
set.
point that we're starting to work on next year's budget. So these are all great discussions.
Yeah, I
I hear that
think
you had something
you
to-
mentioned it in an email this past week that that grant that's due, that application due by the end of the month.
Well, yeah, this would be something that we would look at for future cycles for this one in particular. And a lot, you will see a lot of the state grants tend to be due in that sort of May, June, July timeframe, if they're not in just sort of a rolling application period. for a couple different reasons, but partially because it gives you the time to budget the year prior and say, okay, these are the grants that we're going after. Like, we did that with the, we do have one grant in DCD, and that's for the safety surface at the main park. So that's a little over $200,000 of grant funds that we're seeking. Fingers crossed, we did have a letter of support come from Representative Deasy at the state level for that, and they let us know that they would send that. So, yeah, this is kind of, like you said, at budget season, we sort of lay the groundwork for, okay, this year we're going after this one, and then next year we're gonna go after this. So I think it would take a little time to have a project that is appropriately shovel-ready for, particularly this type of larger grant again. However, we are laying the groundwork, like you said, Brad, regarding sort of those little improvements that makes them believe that they want to invest in us.
So you're on top of it, you're not letting much get by.
I mean, we get a lot of help from, the different organizations that support us, that make us aware. I had a really nice hand from Gateway in putting together the park grant. I did the narrative for it and pretty much turned it over to them and said, all right, guys, make it happen. And, a week later, there it was. So, yeah, it's a partnership.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And forgive me if I don't have my language correct here. You said that there's a public service working group that we have? That has come up
There's a
with-
public works working group.
Public Works
Yes.
working group, okay.
Mhm.
And is that part of the community, or is that just among the board?
It's with the council. That's typically what that would be, in order to, because it's a small group that's really liaising with Public Works Department and with the engineers.
Sure.
So it's really not the sort of thing that you want to open the doors wide, but that's the whole purpose, that for when we have activities and reports coming out, talking about the things that are being discussed there, and when we have the opportunity for community comments and how there are processes if we're going to go do more substantial things, that we have to pass resolutions that require public comment.
That's where my question was. I was trying to understand where the opportunity is from the public to make those suggestions. What forum do they have to contribute ideas?
Opportunity. Yes. So, RJ, would you like to speak up?
Yeah, my phone rings off the hook. But no, I mean, that's really the thing, is we try to put out there, particularly with the newsletter has come back this year. So I've at least tried to put myself out there as much as possible, to sort of collect the concerns and bring them either, when is appropriate, either immediately or at budget time. People are really worried about this and that. The most feedback that I've gotten has been regarding things like the block party, where, we had people that started kind of buzzing about it on social media, and our newest member of the planning commission is a professional planner. So she and I got coffee early on, and she said, have you ever thought about having a block party? And I said, oh yes, you're in the right spot. So, that's kind of opened up to the community. When it comes to the committees, those are usually just their ad hoc council committees.
Yeah, I wasn't specifically
So,
referring to the committee.
yeah, but
If one person calls you and another person calls you with the same idea, the public doesn't know that there are multiple people that have
well,
that same idea.
so I mean, I try to be as communicative about that as possible, and also the working group that exists for the block party was sort of me hearing from the planning commission, from a couple interested business owners and citizens and things like that they all were excited about this one thing. And so I was sending them to the planning commission and the rec board as sort of a germination forum, for ideas. So that's kind of what came out of it. So I do try and connect people as proactively as possible to where things are happening.
Awesome.
All right, anything else on that? Shall we move on to community announcements?
I had one.
Oh,
one
okay,
more,
I'm sorry.
And this was from last week. We were going to look at some information around the costs around, let me see, I have it here, some of the volunteerism costs
Well, so, yeah, we did get in touch with the Crafton Celebrates chair about, what are the man hours essentially that you need or what has been done in the past. And the answer we got was more or less, they're so darn busy that they don't have time to compile the individual data on that. I mean, she could probably tell you, who actually volunteered, but not the exact schedule or,
Yeah, I'm
pull a
looking
sheet out.
exponentially, yeah, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Right.
I have no interest in asking someone to find out if it's 422 hours or 582 hours. I'm just wondering, are we at 100 hours now, or we were at 10,000 hours in the past?
Oh, I see what you're
You know,
saying, yeah.
what's?
Order of magnitude?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exponential.
So, well, and I know that the volunteerism used to be, at least from what's been described to me, much greater. This is the first time that I was here for Crafton Celebrates. It was not previously its own reserved fund that was represented in the budget. So while they did keep their own internal bookkeeping and things like that, we weren't coding them in our line items and so this is the first year that we're going through that all on our end as a process, and I can produce that stuff, when we kind of put a bow on it with all the finances, but in terms of sort of the metadata that you're asking for, that's just, Crafton Celebrates was kind of keeping things going on their own for a while with, there was support from the borough, but not quite as much administrative collaboration in terms of our office providing tracking support. So I don't have a backlog of that I can pull out.
Yeah, I would just,
So,
I guess there are
just a
questions.
moment, Eric. Would either of you gentlemen like to make a comment about that? 'Cause I thought
No, we're good.
Okay, all right, because I know you've all been involved with that and might
Yes.
have shed some light on that.
To give like a 10,000-foot view of
Yeah.
volunteerism that Crafton Celebrates, this year involved just basically 3 organizations, the Boy Scouts, St. Philip's Church, and Strike Out Cancer. Strike Out Cancer had 1 booth and basically had 4 to 5 volunteers running it the whole time, with about 3 or 4 at both at the same time. St. Philip's Church, they ran two different game booths and they sold funnel cake. The funnel cake booth basically had probably 4 people in at the same time, and each one of the game booths had anywhere from 3 to 4 people in at any given time. The Boy Scout booth would, I think this year they had approximately 5 game booths, and they run with 1 or 2 people in each booth throughout the festival.
Rich, can I just get your name and address for the record so we can put you in the minutes?
Okay, Rich
I
Kramer,
know.
yeah.
For the record.
Rich Kramer, 26 South Grandview.
Okay, and there we are only talking about the volunteers who are manning the booths during the event.
Right.
You have
You have to have one
months
more
of-
organization, Crafton Celebrates itself.
Right.
They run a pop booth and a water booth
I was there.
where they do 1 to 2 volunteers at all time in each
Yeah.
booth. They run a French fry booth where they have 3 to 4 volunteers at all times. And then they bring in the bounce houses that you see, which I believe they had 3 bounce houses this year, and they man 1 or 2 people at each one of those bounce houses at any given time.
Right.
And then there's the ticket booth too.
Oh, the ticket booth, correct, and they have 4 windows, 5 windows open all the time?
I think we had 2 running this year, but then we had at least 2 people in each.
Because we weren't really selling tickets.
Yeah, we did the wristbands.
Right, they just purchased wristbands to be able to use the bounce houses.
So over and above that, months and months before the event, you have a committee of how many people? And
we
how
had
many hours?
There's a committee that's constantly, there's a center committee that's 4 people, and they meet in July right after the festival, take August off, and then for the rest of the year, they're meeting, and approximately January, they need at least 1 volunteer for every organization I mentioned. have to be
Right,
at every meeting.
So your core group that meets pretty much year-round, except for taking August off to recover, what would you say a month? And I know that it gets more as you get closer to the
Right.
event, but if you were to say, about how many days, hours, whatever, a month, and of course, you've got your chairperson who's probably doing more than.
Yes,
Yeah.
Angela's a lot more than everybody else. Angela and her mother Pam are probably busy, twice as busy as everybody else, getting things planned, getting everything bought and set up. But that really doesn't occur until after the first of the year.
Right, right.
The end of this year, you'll have 5 people meeting, and starting this year, we have a committee to run the race, make sure the race comes back now. And we have a committee I'm gonna be on that committee. There are 4 people on that committee that will be meeting once or twice a month for a couple hours each time to be at the, one person will be taking care of advertisement, one person will be taking care of talking to the race, the people who run the race, and the rest of us will be working on volunteerism and making sure we have the people available, talking to, we're gonna try to get some sponsors, talk to the sponsors for next year.
There, just FYI on that, and then we'll come back around. There are some key groups who have been participants over the years that are very interested in having some involvement to make sure that this race continues, and a couple of other experts that are interested in helping ensure that that race continues.
Good,
So-
sounds good.
Yes. All right, so does that kind of give you a
Yeah, I
sense of
guess,
it?
so if that, I'm not great at math, but I'd say
3 days at a
100.
time.
I'm pretty good.
If you take their standing committee, you do 2 times a month, and you have, say, it's 3 hours.
No,
times
I'm just
3
trying to
days.
get to people in
Right.
general. So
3 days.
if we would say that there's 100 to maybe, I would say stretch 200 people that are involved in the planning and the maintaining of.
Not the planning portion of it. The
planning.
planning is probably
Planning
done
and the
by,
maintaining and all together.
Less than
Probably less than 200, maybe less than 100.
Yeah, less
Yeah.
than one,
So-
absolutely.
So 100 volunteers.
the actual
we could-
planning of the actual planning throughout the year,
All of it,
except for the festival itself, you probably have 15 to 20 dedicated people
Yep.
on a monthly basis that are meeting and planning and filling in the holes and figuring out exactly what holes they need to fill also.
So my question is, given that, at its peak, I think 1976 was the mayor of Toronto, at its peak, how many people?
Well, at its peak, I was involved with it starting in 1980.
Uh-huh.
In 1980, like I said, we had 3 organizations this year. We had between 10 and 15 organizations in 1980 that were down there with a booth, either selling food or running game booths. So, and each one of those had 1 or 2 people attending meetings on a monthly basis from January forward.
So you said there were 10 in 1980, and there are 3 now?
There are 3 now, right. The Girl Scouts have dropped out because they can no longer support what they need. We used to have the Democratic and Republican committee would have a booth. They no longer have booths. The fire company had a booth. They no longer have the booth. We had a Cub Scout and 2 Boy Scout troops that would be down there on a yearly basis. We now have only 1 Boy Scout booth that's down there on a regular basis.
Yeah.
CIT was down there, CIT, 2 years back, decided,
We have the Crocs this
came to
year.
the conclusion that they couldn't do it anymore.
So I guess that answers it. I mean, when people ask, what it was, what it is, there was probably, based off of that list, if we're less than 100, they were probably over 500, easily.
Easily.
Over 500.
If you take everybody that volunteered throughout the
So-
festival, yes, easily.
Looking at today and where we are, and kind of, if we want to get back and return to that level of an event, we would need collectively another 400 people or so from the community.
Right,
to
and
do that at the same time.
you can see how it's gone down where we can't get the people coming in there. Because we used to have no problem running a 5-day event we had an abundance of volunteers for this year. We're done. This past year, we went to 3 days. This next year, we're gonna go to 4 days. Everybody was in agreement that they could do the 4 days. A couple of them were hesitant saying that they could do it, but said yes, they would both do it and do a 4-day event this year.
I think that's fantastic for people to know, thank you.
And if we could get more organizations involved, if we could talk to, some of the organizations that dropped out fast, it's a possibility we could go back to 5 eventually, but yeah, volunteerism has really gone downhill.
All right, thank you.
And
Philip, oh, I'm sorry.
the last question I have was for Robbie. You were gonna hopefully look at some numbers around how do we track the man hours, the associated costs around things like the Woodlawn flooding. What is it costing us every time it happens?
I tracked the events, I didn't track the actual man hours.
Yeah.
So I can tell you there was 3 events that we responded to. One was with the fire department that they came in. There were our workers, they're volunteer firefighters, they came in and helped us assist in the cleanup. Other cleanups involved a street sweeper, a driver, and 2 workers to actually do some physical sweeping and shoveling.
So every time we have a decent rainfall,
Not every time. Those are extreme ones, like the
well,
past,
3 times in the
3 times in the
past
past.
6 months?
the past year.
Year, okay.
Last year. This year only had response one time.
Okay.
And that was just to pick up some big debris. So
So,
it didn't really infringe on the point where it encroached on the people's driveways of the private property.
Mhm.
Most of it was contained underneath the trestle, which the city is responsible to do the cleanups.
but even at that, we're talking about multiple times a year, we're responding with a handful of borough employees, plus volunteer fires, plus plus equipment, and whatever else that I'm not good enough to know what is involved in all of that. So that's the level of effort that we're putting in based off of a problem that's been kind of isolated as a kind of a city maintenance issue.
Well, would you say that was normal before the extreme rainfall years?
Yeah, that has been an ongoing, when I was with the city, we used to respond to that same situation. I'm going back in the 80s, so it is a
Right, I'm
chronic
not
situation.
sure that we're really isolating what you're after, Eric. This is just part of
It's an
what Public
ongoing,
Works
right.
always, weather incidents, those sorts of things involve. That's part of municipalities' responsibility.
Well, what we've been talking about, these are specific issues where it's not our pipe and we don't do the maintenance on it. This is something that happens from the city of Pittsburgh that we're having to clean up even though it's kind of their creek, if you will.
Right, it's their pipe.
Right.
When it overflows, it's their responsibility to clean up.
But
We'll
we're
respond
showing that-
to the Crafton residents a little quicker than the city does.
Right.
We're not gonna wait for them to clean our street, even, occasionally that has happened where middle of the night, they may come out and use their flusher. We don't have a flusher, that's why we use the fire department. They will respond and do it occasionally. On the same token, if our guys will respond quicker, we respond.
Understood, thank you.
Okay. Good luck.
All right, I just have 3 things for the website that I'd like to see posted if possible, and I don't know if we have to process yours. One, Alcoasand has a Clean Water Assistance Fund. I'd like to see if on the page where we have our fees listed, there's actually a reimbursement that residents can get if they meet the income and household size. Then Allegheny County has a program called Lead Safe Homes, and it's very helpful, and it covers up to $12,000 of lead abatement. And we do live in an older community. Most homes in this community are before 1978, so it's very helpful. So I can pass that information off to the manager, and maybe we could put it on the website somewhere so residents can see it. And then third, most important, when we revamped the website, we didn't finish building out the tax information, and I'd like to see a matrix for the different fees. So we have the trash collection, the borough wage, occupation, business privilege tax, sewage, municipal lien letters, and property taxes. And all of them are sort of like, they're just dummy links. There's actually no link to them right now. And I was curious if we could just put together a simple matrix for these different fees, and particularly for real estate, there's a lot of discussion in the social media world about if you buy a house, what is your tax burden in the municipality? So I'd like to see one table that sort of gives you an idea. If you buy a house for $50,000, you know, right across, this is Crafton, this is Carlinton School District, this is County of Allegheny, and then, you know, maybe just go 50, 100, 150, 200, and that way they can get a quick snapshot. It's very transparent to the taxpayer or future taxpayer, and it's just a one-stop shop, and they can see it quickly on our website, and we can just say, hey, you want to know what our taxes are? Just hit the link, and here you go.
For quick reference, I just went on Ross's page and they have something kind of similar. to
Yeah, so the county actually maintains that for all the municipalities, so we could probably just copy and paste that from the
Or
Borough page.
provide the link to
Yeah.
where it is on the county
Yeah,
side.
I think we would, in the office, like to go over the entire website with a fine tooth comb as
As you have time to do it.
capacity allows, we try. Tax page in particular is definitely one that could use a little TLC.
So we can make that a priority in the coming weeks?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. And then, do you want to go ahead and make sure that you email those links
Yes,
to
I'll do that.
admin, and we'll get those on as soon as possible?
Thank you.
Anything else for discussion tonight? Okay, RJ, would you like to do the community announcements then?
Sure. All right. So, Crafton Ingram Rotary, their annual Rib and Chicken Fest, and I'm told there's also something called a llama plop included in this, will be held on August 1st from 4 to 7 p.m. at Crafton Park. You can contact DEP Technologies for more information at 412-922-8824. Dennis is quite involved with that event. Just a quick announcement, Crafton Pool. We'll switch to the end of summer hours starting August 1st. End of summer hours means that the pool closes no later than 7 p.m. daily. Announcement regarding the Firecracker 5K. The refund checks for that will be mailed out this week. Just want to say thank you for everybody's patience. We were just getting the list certified, and then we, get the Borough check signed, envelopes stuffed in the mail. So those are on their way, and that's probably why your stack of checks is so thick to sign at this meeting. So last couple ones. Anyone interested in participating in the 2019 house tour, please contact the Borough office, 412-921-0752, extension 10. That is the main office extension. If you call mine, I will just send you back to them because they keep track of all that stuff. So please give them a call if you're interested in being one of the houses on the house tour this year. Last item, I just kind of threw this on here because I saw it in the newsletter, thought it was a nice thing to put out there. Mission of Mercy, a nonprofit, is holding a free dental clinic at PPG Paints Arena on Friday, July 26th and Saturday, July 27th. I'm pretty sure that's this weekend, yeah. Doors open at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the clinic opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. Patients are seen on a first-come, first-served basis. There's more information and a link to their flyer. From what I understand, they will give one procedure per patient per day, so I think that's, non-major fillings, teeth cleaning, things like that. There are no income requirements, kids and adults, everything, if you don't have access to dental care insurance, this might be a good opportunity to get that taken care of. So.
Okay, then moving on to.
Could I just, you mentioned a Crafton pool, kind of comment that was given to me this week about the pool. There are rentals that people do, and it can be rented, I guess, by people in the town and outside of the town to rent the facility out. And there's been, I guess, more than once in this summer where there's been things that were out of hand there. And I guess maybe, is it possible just to coordinate when these after-hours things happen, to ask the police to just add it to what they're doing, their patrol and
I believe
stuff?
that's already on there.
It hasn't been. That's why it was brought up to me, is they've been at 2 events where things were out of hand and there was nobody there that could.
Okay, so in the evenings, we, right now, have between 1 and 2 officers on, and their responsibility is to patrol the whole municipality. So I'm sure that they maybe came through and that no one called
Right.
when things got out of order.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems, and I hear it from community members often. It's like, well, this happened, that
Did you
happened, well,
call?
did someone call 911? And they'll
I
say,
believe
well, okay, so here is public service announcement. Anything that you see something, say something, dial 911. Otherwise,
I
our police
completely
officers
agree
cannot respond,
with the
and
senator.
neither can our fire department.
My ask would be, I would imagine there's a calendar somewhere of these events. Can that be shared with that department?
That's something that we could talk to the pool manager because
Right.
she maintains that schedule.
That probably would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there have been a couple incidents in which they actually were called down or stopped by because
Right.
of direct complaints.
Right.
I know they kind of squeeze it into their schedules.
I live behind it, I've called.
Yeah, yeah, there was one party in particular that got a little interesting, but, yeah, I mean, we can certainly pass along the request. I would say that, once the mayor and the chief get back, they might be
Like
better
you said, there's
to
only
ask
one or two of
directly.
them. And it's a pretty big little town, so if they don't know that there's something going on, they may not know to prioritize stopping by that, that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, we do have mutual aid that we provide back and forth. I do know that there was some kind of incident last night where I heard and saw 3 cars go down Crafton Boulevard. So some of our neighbors came to the fore last night to assist with some event. So,
Amazing.
yep, that mutual aid between communities seems to work very well in this area, both for police and fire. All right,
Thank you.
all right. Did you finish announcements?
Yes,
Okay.
so we're on the comments now.
Additional comments. Okay, so we have Karen about tree trimming.
I just wondered if council, I'm sorry, my name is Karen Falco, 257 Noble Avenue. I just wondered if council had taken a look at the tree trimming that's been going on by Duquesne Light.
Oh, we know.
And before anyone launches into a tutorial about how Duquesne Light needs to trim the trees, this pruning has been rather aggressive. I would call your attention to Steuben Street, where we used to have that beautiful picture of that arbor of beautiful flowers from the trees hanging over in springtime. I think that's a thing of the past. The trees have just either been halved or the whole top taken off.
That's definitely something that has to be looked at, particularly because the trees that you're talking about have outlived their lifespan to start with.
No, these are
You're
the more
talking about
recent.
the
These are the
blooming
more,
ones?
these are the more recent trees, the ones that we planted to make that beautiful picture of the arbor.
Oh, you mean the Bradford pears? That
Pardon?
tends to be after about 30 years is typically when I hear they expect to last. But besides that, I don't know if it really helps the way the trees look now, but we have met with Duquesne Lights arborists twice already in the last month, so.
They've been.
Oh, no, Davey's the trimming company that they contract with. We've met with an actual staff member from
Well, it's bad. You're not going to have any flowers.
We have expressed
Over
our
Steuben Street
feelings.
next spring.
For sure.
They're just not going to be there.
What is Duquesne like? What have they agreed to do to respond to?
We had a member of the Shade Tree Commission walking around with their actual, on-staff arborist, to take a look at a couple of the trees. Yeah, we had them up on Sterrett Street, and we were working with a resident there.
You need to get them down on Steuben, down on
Yeah,
560.
Yeah, I think they went down there with Mary as well.
It's already gone.
Yeah,
It's too
ultimately-
little too late unless you catch them soon.
Yeah.
Is there liability in that?
No,
We don't, the borough has very little to say or do about this. It's their trees and their rights of way, they have easements. And we really
I agree with
can't,
that.
there's nothing that we can really do. And they will meet with you and sometimes they will
Give
agree to do
vouchers.
little things
Yeah.
here or there, but they're not going to say.
Could we
They've
ask them
taken
to make a contribution to a tree fund for new plantings?
Yeah, they've
We
taken
have.
so much of those
You
trees.
could.
I encourage you to take a look at them in front of that apartment building
Yeah.
between Union and Noble. I have no idea what damage went on down
They do.
towards
All
the
right.
shopping center.
well noted, we
So
really
just to
appreciate
clarify
that.
this issue, what you're saying, Mr. Corbel, is that even though that the residents themselves used their blood, sweat, and tears to plant those trees, that the ownership
Well,
is
that's
not
not-
theirs.
Those are shade trees, so that would be.
But the borough actually planted those trees.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I'm trying to clarify, was this something
Thank
that
you.
residents planted and then?
No.
Okay.
So, and we did have a pre-pruning session with Duquesne Light and the arborist. And the arborist does the inspection after the cutting. And we did file some complaints about the way it was done with the Shade Tree Commission and the manager's office. So they were put on notice that we didn't really approve, or we really weren't concurrent with the pruning efforts. So Shade Tree Commission is meeting with the arborist to see if there's any type of result.
There's one particular
Alright.
tree that we're
All
getting
right,
some
Carden, hold on, it's community comments.
For clarification, the solicitor can add to this. So just for the public's knowledge, the utility has a right of way.
Yes.
And they are governed by the PUC, and they have rights and indemnification in this case to protect the right of way and to provide services. And there's actually a news story that's been popping up on PXI about a municipality that failed to actually take care of their trees that fell into the right of way, which caused a surge, which ruined people's electronics, and West Penn Power says, well, we weren't responsible for it. And so same thing goes here for Duquesne Light. Duquesne Light actually has ownership of that airspace, and they're gonna do everything they can to protect that, because they also have to protect themselves from claims of dereliction of duty or negligence of not maintaining the right of way.
Bill, I had kind of cautioned that I didn't want somebody to go into the tutorial. I
Yeah.
mean, this is more than pruning. This is more than trimming. Please go
Understood.
down and look with what's left of your trees.
Understood,
Yeah.
and thank you for your comments. Mona?
Motor Rush, 794 Clearview Avenue. First of all, thank you to those of you who responded to my concerns and my requests for help, especially with some of my projects. I wanted to return to the idea of parking permits, and I'd like to cite two examples. Recently, the fifth vehicle owned by a family on the street has appeared on the street. So this family, very nice family, is parking 5 vehicles. They're parking a trailer, a boat, an SUV, a car, and now a pretty large van. And I have a picture of the van if you wish to see it. Again, very nice family. They're parking on Clearview Avenue on the right-hand side of the street. In my situation, where there's no back alley, no access to anything in the back, and not much back space on Middle Road either, for the rest of the right-hand side of Clearview. I'd like you to think about parking permits again. Secondly, on the left-hand side of the street, where there is LEA, where there are large lots, in one case, a double lot on a private family, with 3 vehicles. And one of the vehicles is what I see outside my living room and dining room. And I can share this photo with you too, I can send it to you. But it looks like something right out of
Mayberry.
Mayberry. It looks like something right out of the Grapes of Wrath.
I just watched that.
You know, it's right out of 1930 something. And I'm sure this antique vehicle is a prized possession of my neighbor across the street. I'm sure. It's great. But why should that be my view, a rusted truck? When he has 2 garages, a back alley, and a double wide. Now, I might addressed it with the neighbor, and it won't. Because a couple years ago, we exchanged a few words, and then we sort of kissed and made up, and we're still in a sort of made up time period. And I don't want to go back to antagonizing you by saying, why do I have to look at your rusted antique truck outside my living room? I sit on my couch, where do I sit? A rusted truck. So I would like you to consider, I heard the concern about how do we monitor this. We'll figure out a way. There has to be a way. This is the 21st century. There's all kinds of technology. This group couldn't figure out a way to do anything. So to monitor parking permits shouldn't be that big a deal. And if people want to persist, and they have the right to own as many vehicles as they want, but there's got to be some thinking and some attention given to, if you're going to beautify Crafton, you're going to make the downtown, and I'm not clear where the downtown is. I've lived here 26 years. What is the downtown?
Well, one comment, and you're at your limit. Thank you so much for your comment, and we're all listening.
May I say something?
Sure.
No, I think there's an ordinance as far as having campers on the street and as far as having boats on the street, or even a boat in your driveway or a camper in your driveway. I think we have an ordinance.
Susan enforces that for enthusiastic.
So, okay, so what you just said is that you concur that we do, and that our code enforcement officer
In the yards.
is enforcing the ordinance about what is allowed in view in the yards, and then we can certainly look up what other options we have.
There's a gray area for recreational vehicles on the street.
Well, it's a good thing we're a deliberative body that can pass laws.
And that we're looking at, we have advertising for rezoning coming up. So these are all issues that we can look at. Philip, one last?
To contribute to that conversation, when I was in Washington DC, I used an application called Park Mobile that was quite nice, and it might be something the administration may want to take a look at. You can download it in the App Store and see how it works, and if you'd like to ask me more about how it works, in my experience, I'm more willing to share that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. All right. Any other additional comments before we adjourn?
So just to clarify this point, so there is a gray area in the code right now as understood by Susan?
Well, that's part ours.
I'm sorry.
Because we're talking about on street, so that's not season?
Well, I mean,
That's the police department.
Police handles on street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the
On
gray
street
area
code
you're talking
enforcement.
yeah.
about. Okay. So what, if anything, would we be able to do aside from just instruct the police to try to, prioritize that?
Well, we'd have to make it more clear for them to be able to enforce it. So,
The ordinance.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I think we need to look at. Did you go to the park
No,
office?
I'm not familiar with that ordinance. I'm going to request that they take a look at it, but we'll be happy to do so.
Okay, all right. Hearing nothing else, meeting adjourned. Thank you.